Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the asylum. You may have been brought here against your will, or you may have voluntarily committed yourself, but while you are here, allow me to entertain you. You certainly can't leave, at least for now. While you're here, allow me to introduce myself. I am Beyond 5150, the inpatient of this asylum, and I will be your sovereign of the spine tingling, your master of the macabre, your purveyor of the petrifying. I will tell you stories you will wish you had never heard. Try as you might, you won't find your happy place here. So, welcome to your current circumstances and just accept the hair raising on your neck, your chills, and goosebumps. Oh, and there is no milk and cookies. Our first story of the evening is one I have been given permission to read from a very awesome writer. His name is Squishy Cabbage, and he has written a quite fascinating story. The story is called I Took a Job as a Fire Lookout in the Middle of the Woods. I found a strange set of rules to follow. Again, Squishy Cabbage wrote this, and he has graciously given me permission to read this to you guys. So I hope you all enjoy. After my divorce, I had nothing. Wanting to start over, I moved out to a crappy apartment in a new city. Had no real job, no pets, no kids, and obviously no wife. No real connections to the rest of the world. I was just existing. I was constantly applying to any job I could find and had landed a shitty job in a shitty cafe, serving shitty coffee to shitty people. Okay. I was bored and miserable, and despite only recently relocating to another city, I needed a more drastic change. And now, the jackpot has hit. Amidst all those random applications I had submitted was one for a fire lookout. To those people who live isolated, a 70-foot tower in the middle of the woods. No prior experience needed. That's right, a fire lookout. Those people who lived isolated. I'm sorry, that was a mistake there. I walked over to myself. Despite all the weird applications I submitted, I remember filling this one out because I found it as odd, as it stated the role was currently filled. They were accepting applications in case it suddenly became available. I remember thinking it was weird, but going for it anyway. And now I got the job. I got a phone call from a gruff sounding guy who told me the pay, that I'd be living in the tower until the end of summer, so around 2 months. He also told me it was imperative that I start right away, providing me with directions and informing me I would be starting tomorrow if I accept, which I did, obviously. So here's to a fresh start. I've just parked my car into the furthest point it could possibly go, and now I'm going to hike up to the tower. It's just past 8 a.m. and Mark, the guy who gave me the call, said the hike would take about 4 hours. So I'm setting off now, expecting to be there for lunch. Mark assured me there'd be full stock of food at my tower, my new home, and I'd be able to radio the nearest tower where I'd receive the lowdown of how everything works. It's chilly for a summer morning, but I'm very excited for this hike, as the woods in these parts are known for their beauty and quiet atmosphere, something I longed for. I've just arrived at the tower, just past 1 p.m. The hike was challenging, but easy to navigate, as it was well signposted and had a clear trail. The tower's much bigger than I thought it'd be. I'd estimate it's around 100 feet tall with just a hut on the top of 4 stilts. A winding staircase around the outside leading up to it. Next to the tower, an outhouse and a storage unit, which I'm guessing is where the food is stored. I'll explore later once I get into my hut and set my rucksack down. The stairs were a hell of a climb. I'm a bit tired, but I'll get used to it. The hut, it is small. It has a balcony all around the outside. Inside there's a bed, a big radio, a table with maps and books, toolbox, smaller portable radio, a lamp, binoculars, and a flashlight. The sides of the huts were windows, so from the inside I could see the outstretched woods all around me. Creepy, but it makes sense as I'm literally keeping an eye out for fires. I set my rucksack down and remembered what Mark had said about radioing at the nearest tower for directions, so I did. "Hello? Is anyone there?" I asked as I fumbled with the big radio. "Hey, you're the new guy, aren't you?" "I'm Allison," a chirpy sounded woman replied through the static. "I've been covering your part of the woods whilst you've been making the journey here. I can't see really too far into it, so I'm glad you're here." "Nice to meet you. Yeah, I'm the new guy, Oscar," I radioed back. "Mark said you could give me the lowdown." "I can. Well, you've already figured out how to work out the radio, so that's a start. The toilets are at the bottom of the tower, so is the food stock, which gets topped up every week by Mark or his son. As for the actual job, it's a lot like of looking around, just making sure no one is camping at night when they shouldn't be, and making sure no fires are started," Allison went on. "Also making sure the paths are all clear, but it's all in the handbook, which should be on your desk. Give it a read." "Thanks, Allison. I'll give that a shot and get back to you," I enthusiastically replied. I'll radio if I have any questions." No response. Cool. She seems pleasant enough. I reached for the handbook and was flicking through it. It basically said everything she just told me in more mumbo-jumbo technical terms, but I'll study it back to front just to make sure I do a good job. As I flicked through, a piece of paper fell out of the handbook. It was lined paper, which had been written in blue ink. The handwriting was messy, almost frantic. The paper read, "Rules to avoid the smiling lady. If you see a woman in the woods with a if you see a woman in the woods with a manic smile on her face, don't approach her or draw attention to yourself. Return to your tower. If your radio goes off and it's anyone except your closest tower, don't answer it, no matter what you hear. 3. If you hear a woman crying between the hours of 1 a.m. and 4 a.m., ignore it. At night, always sleep with your lamp on. If it starts to flicker, quickly run to turn on your main light until morning. If your lamp flickers off completely before you can do this, hide under your bed until morning. At night, If you hear someone running up the stairs to your tower, also turn on the main light until morning. If you don't do this by the time she's at the top, it's too late. 6. If you wake up and see the smiling woman staring through your window, hide under your covers and hold your breath. She will come into your hut and you will feel her breathing right above you, as if she is hovering over you. Don't breathe. This will last only a few seconds. Once you feel her leave, turn on the main light till morning. If you hear any scratching at any point, either on your hut or by the outhouse, turn off all the radios and hide under your covers until the scratching stops. If you're investigating a campfire at night and upon your arrival you hear a woman scream, run back to the tower as fast as you can. 9. If at any point you are returning to your tower and you notice someone else inside it, run. Do not stop running until you reach the next tower. Don't look back. She will be chasing you. What the hell? Is this some creepy, sick joke? I reach for the radio to ask Allison about the weird rules I just found, but I don't want to be the new guy who fell for the prank and just gets made fun of for being creeped out, so I'm just going to leave it. Instead, I'll explore the area a bit and finally eat some food, get settled in. Good night, dude, Allison radioed, just as I was drifting off my first night. I jolted out of sleep with a fright and hastily radioed back. Night, Allison. Thanks for the help today. My first day was done. After eating, I explored the woods and became acquainted with the machete used for clearing the paths, which was a great stress relief. I had read up on some of the laws of the woods and further responsibilities of the job. Allison had popped up occasionally just to check in, but I never brought the real rules I found. But now I was wide awake, probably from the fright I had gotten from the radio, with her wishing me good night. I stood out of bed and looked around me, seeing nothing but the forest. It was dark and creepy, but the darkness was a good thing. No fires. I knew at night there were other watchers. Less were needed, as fires much easier to spot at night. But it's still important that I knew what to do if it was me who spotted one. I was just about to hop back into bed when I heard a scratching noise. That's strange. It's probably just an animal bound by the storage box, scratching, trying to get in. Jumping into bed, tired after the first day, I reached down to turn my lamp off. Just as I do this, the scratching got faster. Almost as if whatever is making this is getting excited. I move my hand away from the lamp and the scratching slows. That's weird. What else is weird is the scratching seems almost methodical. It has a rhythm to it. Suddenly, both my radios start to emit a high-pitched noise. What the fuck? Shitting myself, I hopped out of bed and turned off the portable radio. And just as I was fiddling with the big radio, I caught the glimpse of the rules I had seen earlier. Oh, shit. There was something about that scratching, wasn't there? I'm not the superstitious type, but I'm not taking any chances, so I quickly grabbed the list. Rule 7. If you hear any scratching at any point, either on your hut or by the outhouse, turn off all radios and hide under your covers until the scratching stops. Fuck! I turned off the big radio and jumped in under my covers. What the fuck, man? I could still hear the scratching, but it sounded closer. It sounded like it had gone from being a distant noise to being right on the wooden door of my hut. It was weak now, as if whatever was making it was lightly dragging their fingernails across the doorframe. I ain't moving. What the fuck is it? It's the next morning. I had eventually fallen asleep under the covers last night. The scratching had stopped, but I didn't move from my covers at all, eventually letting the tiredness take over. Looking back, I feel kind of stupid. I'm in the woods. There's a fuck ton of animals, and radios can pick up all types of feedback. I guess it makes sense the first night is the hardest, trying to adjust to living 100 feet up alone in the middle of the woods. Well, I'm just gonna make the best of the day. I'm sure the rest of the nights will be much less eventful. I can't stop thinking about that scratching last night. What was it? It has to be an animal, right? I mean, fuck. I hope it's an animal. I'm also trying not to think about that list, but man, it's hard not to. I brought it with me just in case, although I feel sort of silly doing it. I bet it's a prank. It's only my second day, and I'm already being pranked. My mind's racing all around the place. Anyways, I'm currently on patrol, just walking some of the routes, pathways, making sure no one's camping in any of the openings. It's getting dark, so I think I'm gonna head back. I was just about to take a turn that'll circle me back to my tower when I catch a glimpse of a campsite. Here we go. My first real task. Telling campers they gotta pack up and leave. This area is for hiking only. I head on over. The campsite has set up in a large clearing in the trees. There's just a single reddish-yellow tent and dried-out fire pit. Hello? I called out. You can't be camping here. It's for hiking only. Silence. No reply. I walk closer to the campsite, veering towards the fire pit in case something jumps out of the tent at me. I'm such a wimp. I call out again. Hello? Is anybody there? Nothing. That's when I start to feel weird. Something just didn't feel right. I can't explain it. It was just off. I'm sure whoever set this out is just hiking and will be back, but it's almost already dark, which kind of make me worried. Wait, there was a rule about this, I think. I took the list out of my pocket and quickly scanned it. Sure enough, Rule 8. If you are investigating a campfire at night, and upon your arrival you hear a woman scream, run back to the tower as fast as you can. Okay. Well, not okay, but okay. I've not heard a scream. It's just an empty campsite. And there isn't even a live fire. I'll just radio Allison. Allison, hey, there's a campsite here. No fire, but no people either. What should I do? Whereabouts is it? Allison replied instantly. I gave her my coordinates after referring to the map, which I had to use my flashlight to view as it was getting to be complete darkness. I got it. It's just on the edge of my zone. I'll head down there now. You just go back to your tower, okay? Allison responded. Right. You sure? I asked. Positive. Head back. Be safe. Okay, she's the pro. I'll radio her asking how it's going when I get back. I was about walking for about 30 minutes, almost back to my tower, when I spotted a clear pathway that jutted off into the trees. Weird. I don't remember seeing that on the map. I thought the road I was on had no paths leading off of it. Oh, figuring I missed it in the morning and that I'd check it out tomorrow, I trudged back to my tower. Once back, I sat at my desk, just staring at the rules. I still hadn't asked Allison about them, and I don't want to unless something weird happens. Tonight wasn't even weird. I just found an empty campsite. No one screams like the rules warned. I've just been sitting here reading the rules for about 20 minutes, and my radio goes off. Hey, Oscar, I've dealt with the camper. He says he was just taking a shit by some trees. Wasn't aware he wasn't allowed to camp here, Allison explained. Must have been doing his business when you were by the site. I'm walking him to his car now. All good. Okay. Thanks for dealing with that. Good night, I responded. Feeling bad, she trekked all the way out there for that as I got into bed. It's the next afternoon. Last night was fine. There's no issues at all. I'm feeling much more safe and secure now. I've left the list on the table today. I spent the morning eating a lot. I think my appetite's growing to the all that walking around. I've just been staring out at the woods from my tower. It's calming. It's time for my late afternoon rounds. Make sure nobody's camping, but first I want to check out that weird trail that ain't on any maps. I get to it quite quickly. It's relatively close, and sure enough, it's clear as a trail can as any. It's as if it's been maintained just as well as the main ones. I trudged along it, not expecting much. It's a bit downhill, but not a hard walk. I'm walking about 5 minutes, and I think I see the end of the trail. And that's all I see. Just an end. That's kind of shit. This leads to literally nothing. Just a wall of trees. I'm just about to turn back when I see it. There's a small red handkerchief around the branch of a nearby tree. Interesting. I walked up to it. Just as I approach it, I see another one, slightly deeper in the woods, and behind that, another one. Oh, fuck. Am I about to be an idiot and walk right into a serial killer's trap by following these? Almost as if I want to prove it to myself that I'm not a wimp, I'm gonna follow them. I've gone past about 5 handkerchiefs, each plain red with no inscriptions or anything, and I'm about to reach another. The difference is this one's on the ground. The rest were all up in the branches. Past this one, I just can't see anymore. It's a bit annoying. Sighing as I reach down to pick up that last handkerchief to inspect it. What the fuck? It's just tied around something, wooden, kinda heavy. I heave it up. Dirt rises off a wooden door as it reveals a small bunker. Holy shit, this is fucking cool. It's literally about 10 feet deep and 10 feet wide. It's got a ladder on its wall where the door lifted. I shine my light in, and I could see a sleeping bag on the floor below and a camera. That's it. Climbed down the ladder. It was sturdy. It felt like it had been crafted very well. In fact, the whole bunker seems pretty clean for being an underground bunker. But there's literally just a sleeping bag in here and a camera with a charger plugged into the camera itself, but obviously not to any wall sockets. It's a fucking bunker. Yeah, I picked up the camera and tried to turn it on. It's dead. It's a relatively modern camera. Has a screen with to view pictures on one side, which seems fine other than a slight crack. The main lens of the camera, though, looks like it's been smashed. Looks like its days of taking pictures are over. I'm going to charge this when I get back to my tower. I'm excited to see what's on it. I'll radio Allison about it when I get back, otherwise she'll know I'm starting my actual rounds late. You'll never fucking guess. The campsite from last night, it's back! Hell, it looks like it never left. It's exactly where I saw it last night. Has this guy come back thinking he can sneak back at the exact same spot? I'm literally looking at the same reddish yellow tent in the same position. The only difference is the campfire's lit this time around, which was the only other light provided than my flashlight. Annoyed, I figure I'll deal with this guy when... Then I'll radio Allison the good news that I dealt with it myself. I march up to the tent and reach to pull back the cover. I don't care if I give him a fright. He shouldn't be here, and knows that. And pull the cover off. Wait? What? There's nothing in the tent. I mean, nothing. No person, no sleeping bag, no rucksack, just dirt. The fire is burning strong behind me as I swivel around toward it, scanning the trees beyond its glow. It feels like something's staring at me. I quickly kick the fire and pour what's left of my water on it to put it out. I'm literally plunging myself into complete darkness right now. The fire's out. I'm keeping my flashlight pointed at the ground because I can't bear to look at the trees beyond the campfire. I just feel uneasy. I reach the radio to Allison, and that's a blood-curdling scream pierces the silence, coming from the growth of trees just beyond the campfire. Holy shit! The scream is the one I could have never imagined. It's a scream of like pure pain, pure rage. A dark figure bursts from the trees, screaming all the while, and starts to run at me. I only make out part of its silhouette before turning to run. But I noted the shape of a human, a woman, with long hair and arms flailing loosely by her side. She sprints at me. I'm running through the woods. I'm only just coming to learn, staying on the path I know that leads back to my tower. She hasn't stopped screaming. Still chasing me, a long, drawn-out scream. Is all I can hear, piercing my thoughts. I take the sharp turn on the path. I start to scream to myself, although I can't even hear my own over hers. I'm over halfway back to the tower. Do I even look back? Holy fuck, I can't. Slow me down. What the fuck? The scream is getting louder. She's fucking gaining on me. Why the fuck is she still screaming? The tower! I see the dim glow from the lamp I left on in the hut above, breaching the darkness ahead of me, providing me with some hope. I reach the stairs, bolting at them at full speed. The winding staircase is sort of uneven, so I'm stumbling every few steps, but I've yet to lose my balance. Halfway up, I hear her bolt onto the first few steps. She is fast. I can hear it. She's gaining on me, but I think I can make it. I'm at the top. I run into my hut, and as I slam the door, the screams just suddenly stop. I'm wedged against the door, adrenaline pumping, holding my flashlight like a weapon, ready to fight. The sudden silence doesn't help. At least when she was screaming, I knew where she was. My ears still ring, though, as I heaved against the door. It's been an hour now since the screaming stopped. And since then, I've not heard a sound. My adrenaline has died, but I'm still fucking terrified. I'm finally going to move from the door and radio Allison, unable to speak before from the fear. If that's a prank, that's fucked up. Although, for my sake, I hope it's a prank. I flick the main radio on. Allison? I anxiously gasp. Allison, fucking answer! After what feels like hours of silence, it was only probably half a minute or so, I hear a creaking moan. That's not Allison, is it? It was a woman's voice, sound in pain. What if that freaky thing that chased me got to Allison? Just as I was about to respond to check up on her, the radio sounded again. What started as another moan got louder, turning into a scream. It was the same fucking scream. The same scream that haunt my dreams, tainting them in pain and anger. She was screaming through my radio. I slammed it off. Good morning, man. How'd you sleep? Allison chirped the next morning. Allison, I replied, wearily from my lack of sleep the previous night. What the fuck is this list I found? What list? Allison radioed back. I explained everything that happened, from finding the list to the scratching to being chased by a crazy demon bitch last night. Allison sighed deeply as if to say, "Here we go again." This has happened before. In fact, it happens to every person who gets assigned to your tower, Allison stated. I don't know what to believe anymore. At first, I thought it was just people going crazy from the isolation. I mean, I've never seen anything. But after Harvey, and you only after, what, 4 days? I don't know what to believe. Harvey? I replied. Who's Harvey? The guy before you. He lived in your tower for over a year, refused to ever go home or take a holiday, Allison continued. He was a tough guy, good with his hands. He always had a project going on. Sometimes towards the end, I wouldn't hear from him for days. I think he spent entire nights out of his tower. No idea where he went, though. Towards the end? I asked. I wasn't letting that slide by. Yeah, he disappeared. Mark thinks he ran off. His tower was apparently just empty when he checked up on him. No bags, no belongings, no Harvey. I don't know. Why would he just quit after a year of refusing to leave the woods at all? Allison continued. But in the months leading up to his disappearance, he became obsessed with his smiling lady. Claimed he would see her at night. But he never went into any detail. If I questioned him, he would just stop replying. Like I said, he didn't talk to me much. But him leaving didn't explain why the job advertisement stated job may suddenly become available. So I questioned Allison on that. I don't know about that, she replied. I've been working here for 2 years. Mark still never tells me anything. And who worked here before Harvey? Pondered. Another guy, Rick. He left a few days after I started. But he asked me once if I'd seen a woman in the woods, a woman that smiles. I said no. Thought nothing of it. Thought he was weird. I didn't feel content with the amount of information I was receiving. Unsure if she genuinely doesn't know much or if is hiding something. So I decided to ask about her. What made you take this job? Well, fuck me. I guess we're opening up to each other this morning, aren't we? Allison nervously chuckled. I didn't reply, waiting for her to answer my question. My sister, she went missing in these woods, Allison said, voice trembling. It was right before I started. I took the job to, I don't know, try to find her or try to help others who might get lost. I don't know. I'm sorry about your sister, Allison. Felt bad for asking. It's courageous of you, though. I'm not going to ask any more questions. Not yet. I'm not sure how much she's actually telling me, but at the moment it feels like she's my ally, and I want to keep it that way. I thanked her for talking to me. I trust her, I think. I feel a bit more at ease, although I'm not sure why. Harvey apparently just disappeared, and both he and Rick claim to have seen the smiling lady. Was that the lady who chased me last night? The camera I had found was now charged up. It's evening. I still haven't slept. I've not really moved. I've just been trying to make sense of all the information Allison gave me. I just can't. Maybe the camera will provide some answers. It flickers on. On the screen, 3 choices: photo, gallery, settings. I choose gallery. The first few photos aren't exciting. There's a few pictures of a random lake, a random house, a random car. Nothing that helps me. Flicking through them at such a fast pace, I almost didn't realize I'd skimmed over a picture of the tower. my tower. And at the base of the tower, a family. A family of three. The father had dark hair, quite tall, and looks as if he's experienced with the outdoors. Big, sturdy guy. Mother, a blonde woman, beautiful smile, her arms on her husband's shoulder. Third member is a child, a boy with short brown hair and a striking resemblance to who I guess to be his father. I continue to look through the photos, but no longer see the family together, only the man. He was taking selfies inside my tower, taking photos of the view from my window, the outhouse, and some of the trails. Is this Harvey? Or Rick? If it were Harvey, why would he not want to leave the woods to see his family? Then the photos got stranger. The next photo is of a bunker. The bunker. The one I found nearby, built into the ground, holding only the sleeping bag and the camera. It looks unfinished, a work in progress. With each picture, it looks more complete. Whoever had this camera was building it. Allison said Harvey was good with his hands, didn't she? Why would he build a bunker in the woods, and so close to the tower? The next photo, of a random tree in the darkness. In fact, the next 4 or 5 photos are of this tree. At the base of the tree, a shadow. A weird, distorted shadow. Shadow that doesn't make any sense. Was Harvey, or whoever this guy is, trying to take a photo of something? Was he trying to take a photo of the smiling lady? What the fuck was that noise? What time is it? 2:13 a.m. Something just woke me up. I can't hear anything now, but something definitely woke me up. I was so tired from the night before, I couldn't have just woken up my own accord. Maybe it's I hear a faint crying. A woman's cry. It doesn't sound too close, but I sit up in bed as I listen to the long, mournful wails. I know this rule. Rule 3. If you hear a woman crying between the hours of 1 a.m. to 4 a.m., ignore it. Except I can't ignore it. It sounds so sad, so broken. Part of me wants to go and help her. The other part of me wants to investigate and get answers. No part of me wants to ignore it. Quickly as I can, I slide on my gear, grab my flashlight and radio, and open the door to my hut. I carefully went down the stairs, shining the light at my feet to ensure I don't trip. Crying is coming from an area of the woods off the path, so I carefully tread towards the dark cluster of trees. The cries are of such pain, such sadness. I can only compare them to that of a mother who's lost her child, wailing in complete despair, losing a part of her soul with every agonizing sob. My flashlight is off now as the crying is getting louder. I'm crouched down, moving bush to bush, tree to tree. The air is foggy, cold, getting colder the closer I get. As I crouch behind a tree, I see her. She sat down by a tree, her face covered, crying into her hands. She sighed onto me and has long, dark hair which sprawls down to her face and rests in the dirt. Although I can't see it too clearly, she was wearing a gown which seems clean and undamaged. What is damaged, though, are her arms. Her arms are twisted, broken. One of her elbows is bent backward, with a bone jutting out under the skin of both of her forearms, although not piercing through. Her fingernails, long and sharp. Not an ounce of meat on her. Her body is almost skeletal. Her pale, white skin glowing in the darkness, hugging her collarbone, accentuating her bony figure. My radio statics. Only for a second I look down to turn it off, and as I do, I realize the crying stopped. I'm still looking down at my radio. Fuck. She heard me. I can't look up. I feel sick. I force myself and slowly look up at her. She's looking at me. She has hollow, dark, wide eyes. They look lifeless. The whites of her eyes providing a drastic contrast to her dark pupils. Her eyebrows are raised. She's smiling. Her smile, unnaturally wide, spreading across her face, wider than what should have been possible, baring all of her teeth. Her smile so menacing, dark. On her face, remnants of tears she had cried, some tears still dripping off her sharp cheekbones and dripping down her narrow neck. Except she wasn't crying now. She looked excited. I'm about to run. I can't look away from her, but I'm trying to convince myself to fucking run. I need to run. I've been staring at her for about half a minute and she hasn't moved. Her eyes still locked with mine. Her smile sinister. Just as I'm about to muster the courage to turn my back on her and run, she moves. One quick motion, her neck snaps to the side with a click, and she crawls into the darkness beyond her. Moving so fast, her broken arms cracking as she shot away. This is my chance. I turn to run. I run hard. Don't look back. I'm dodging some trees, running into others, but not stopping. Why'd she just leave me alone like that? Fuck. There's the tower. I run up the stairs, stumbling into my hut and slam the door. I hear nothing. From the safety of my hut, I am looking around the base of the tower, the woods around me. I see nothing. Fuck it. I'm just getting under my covers. I turn my lamp on and jump into bed. Shaking, I try to calm myself so I can listen to my surroundings, listening out for her over my pounding heartbeat. But I hear nothing. There's nothing but silence. Just as I peep out from my covers, building up the courage to radio Allison, I see it. Scratch marks on the floor of my hut. Marks that weren't there before. Marks I must have missed when I raced in. They look like something made by an animal. Made by something crawling. The marks are from the door of my hut, all the way across the room to my bed. I couldn't see her outside before because she was already inside the hut with me. She's under the bed. I'm fucking frozen. I know she's there. I can feel it. She's under my bed. What do? I think back to the rules. Was there anything about this? There were 2 rules that could help. I don't know which one to follow. Rule 6. If you wake up and see the smiling woman staring at you through your window, hide under your covers and hold your breath. She will come into your hut and you will feel her breathing right above you as if she is hovering over you. Do not breathe. This will last only a few seconds. Once you feel her leave, turn on the main light until morning. Or Rule 9. If at any point you are returning to your tower, and you notice someone inside it, run. Do not stop running until you reach the next tower. Don't look back. She will be chasing you. Do I hide under my covers until she leaves, like in Rule 6? Or do I run? 'Cause she's inside my tower, like in Rule 9? She was already inside it when I entered, so that's Rule 9, right? I hear her. Not loud, but I hear her. The kind of sound made when someone is trying to move slowly whilst trying not to break the silence. The slightest shuffle. A second later, a slight cracking noise. Her arms, they're moving. With it, a low, stifled groan. I close my eyes. I need to make up my mind. Do I stay under my covers? Or run? Rule 6? Or Rule 9? I feel the slightest tug at the bottom of my covers. It wasn't a hard tug, and it lasted only a second. Following this, a second tug, slightly harder than last. Fuck this, I choose Rule 9. With an explosion of speed, I leapt out of my bed and burst through the door as it slammed behind me. I don't see her. I don't look. Luckily, I'm already in my shoes from earlier. I'm halfway down the tower, and I hear the bang above me. The door slamming as she leaves the hut. I'm at the bottom of my tower, and I hear the steps above me. She's halfway down the tower. I'm running towards the path, and I hear the shuffle of dirt and grass behind me. She's at the bottom of my tower. I'm running towards the bunker. The noise behind me getting louder. She's catching up. She's on the path. I reach the bunker and quickly open it. I swing onto the ladder and shut the panel above me. I hear her. She's moving around above me, on the wood and the grass around it. Her low moans freeze me, making my hairs stand on end as she croaks in anguish. I'm in the corner of the bunker. I'm staring up toward the door, but I can't see through the darkness. She's still above me. I hear her movements, her mix of fast, sudden jolts and slow, almost confused movements. Maybe she didn't see me go in the bunker. Maybe she doesn't even know about it, or can she not get in? Is this where Harvey would spend his nights when he wasn't in the tower? Allison said she didn't know where he would spend some of his nights. Was it here? I can't hear anything now. It's been about 20 minutes. I think the creature above me has gone, but I'm done being an idiot. I'm staying here till morning. I eventually drift off to the calm sound of the wind caressing nearby trees. So last night was too close. Looking back on my decision to investigate, I feel stupid. I'm not sure if it was from my lack of sleep or that she cast some fucked up spell on me, but I won't be making decisions like that again. I'm going to be a stickler to the rules. It's morning. I'm still in the bunker. I eventually build up the courage to lift the panel above me and peep out, blinded by the sunlight after being enshrouded in darkness so long. All looks clear. Wary, I climb out and head to my tower. I'm quickly climbing the stairs of my tower when I hear a voice behind me. Hello? Oh, I shit myself. Spinning around and almost falling off the side of the staircase. There's a girl at the base of my tower. A normal-looking girl. She has brown hair and glasses and carrying a large rucksack. She's wearing hiking gear and is smiling at me. Sorry to scare you, she says. Hi, I'm Samantha. Sam. I'm still just staring at her, heart pounding. Mark's daughter? she explains. Here to top off your food. Allison had mentioned that Mark or his son would be here for that, but no mention of a daughter. Hey, I reply, voice shaking. Sorry, you scared me. I'm, Oscar. Hey, Sam, she reiterates, still smiling. Are you okay? I force a weak smile and nod. Just gave me a fright, that's all. I thought it was Mark or his son that tops this up. She laughs. It usually is. I've just kind of recently started helping out, I guess. You're actually my first stop today. It's nice to meet you, Oscar. It's getting dark now. I'm feeling determined to find out what's happening in these woods. Don't get me wrong, I'm scared shitless, but I'm done making bad choices. As far as I know, I could be on my own. I don't know who to trust. Allison, maybe? I'll need to see. Just before heading to bed, I radio her to ask something. Hey, Allison, I say, does Mark have a daughter? Oscar, hey, Allison replies a minute later. I was about to radio good night. I'm not too sure about that. Have only met his son. Why? Okay, I was just wondering. You okay, Oscar? Has something else happened? She asked. I'm fine, Allison. Good night. I'm still terrified, but I know what I need to do. These rules are my lifeline. They will keep me alive, so I need to follow them. I know that now more than ever. I'm keeping my shoes on when I sleep tonight, just in case. I decide as I turn on the lamp before switching off the main light. I'd been lying in bed for about 30 minutes when I heard it. The scratching. Again. Rule 7. If you hear any scratching at any point, either on your hut or by the outhouse, turn off all radios and hide under your covers until the scratching stops. The scratching is faint. It sounds like it's coming from somewhere on the staircase, if not down below by the outhouse. Immediately, I rush to my big radio and switch it off. I check my small radio is off, which it is. I swiftly move back to my bed and get under the covers. The scratching continues. It gets louder, each one slow and long, mimicking the sound of nails against a wooden board. Each scratch followed by around 10 seconds of silence, and then another one that sounds closer than the last. Soon, the scratching feels as if it's right by me, almost if it's on the frame of my bed. I hold my breath, close my eyes. Not a rule, I'm just fucking terrified. The next scratch is longer than the rest. It's either on my bed frame or the door of my hut. I don't know. I can't think straight, but I'm not going to move. Scratching stopped. Now, for about 15 minutes. All I can hear is the rustling of the trees below as the wind whips through them, creating an atmospheric whooshing sound right past my hut. I'd already made the decision to stay under my covers for the remainder of the night, just in case, when I heard another sound. Faint footsteps. Each fast thud increases in volume as I realize she's sprinting up the staircase. In my panic, I forget the rule. Instinctively, I jolt out of bed and run to my main light switch. I turn it on and the running immediately stops. I'm frozen, standing by my light switch, waiting for something to happen. But nothing does. Trembling, I edge towards the list of rules which I kept beside my bed, pick it up and check that I've done the right thing. Rule 5. At night, if you hear someone running up the stairs of your tower, also turn on the main light until morning. If you don't do this by the time she's at the top, it's too late. Oh, thank fuck. I had known that my main light was included in more than one of the rules, and I am so relieved I had chosen correctly. I'm looking around the balcony surrounding my tower, and I see nothing. I stare at the top of the staircase. It feels like an eternity, but nothing happens. Nothing comes up. The bright glow of the main light makes it impossible to see out the surrounding woods below. I thought as I sat at my desk. It's been about 2 hours since she tried to run up my stairs, and there's no fucking way I'm going to be able to sleep tonight. So I use my time wisely. I've been intensely reading the maps of the surrounding areas, learning the routes around my tower like the back of my hand. However, I have also learned something new. I've managed to learn the route to the next closest tower. It's not too complicated. Whilst I still think I can trust Allison, I actually want to meet her. I want to see her for myself and talk freely, face to face, not hiding behind a radio. I've decided that tomorrow I'm going to go to Allison's tower. I wake up early. I'm only on a few hours of sleep, but it'll do. In fact, I'm too driven to even notice. I pack a light backpack, some food, water, flashlight, radio, my map, my machete. I also bring the camera to see if Allison can confirm if the man in the photos is actually Harvey. The sunlight is peering over the outstretched trees. I've never really taken in the beauty of a sunrise. I'm usually either asleep or scared shitless, but it was beautiful. I decided not to tell Allison I'm coming. Whilst I do feel a degree of trust, I don't want to warn her of my whereabouts, giving her a chance to change or alter anything, just in case. I lace up my shoes and start the trek to Allison's tower. It should only take about 3 hours. The route was relatively direct, and judging by the map, I wouldn't have too many steep climbs or anything. I noticed a stark difference as I ventured out of my zone and into Allison's. Each lookout has a zone. They are to maintain the paths and deal with any issues that may arise within their zone. However, as I made the transition to Allison's, I noticed that her paths were not well maintained. To be honest, they weren't maintained at all. Overgrown trees, bushes, and flora made me thankful I brought my machete as I hacked away and continued along the barely visible paths. It was tiring work, but I wanted to make sure the paths were clear enough to run through should I suddenly need to. I was just losing motivation and starting to get hungry when I reached her tower. It had taken about 5 hours due to the work I had to put into clearing the paths, but I'm here now. The tower is exactly like mine. Same layout, with a hut on the top of 4 stilts, huddled within a small opening in the woods. Her outhouse is on the opposite side, but her food bank is in the identical position to mine, just to the left of the tower's base. However, there is one massive difference I immediately notice. What the fuck? The remains of a massive fire pit, like that of a bonfire, around 50 feet from her tower. Surrounded by stones, it looks like one that has gotten good use out of it. Considering our job is to make sure there's no fires in the woods, that's a bit fucking strange, isn't it? I make my way up the tower. I'm relatively quiet as I do, partly because I don't want her thinking I'm the smiling lady running up her stairs, but mostly because I'm nervous. Upon reaching the top, I can already see the tower has nobody in it. In fact, it looks like it never has anyone in it. The hut has old nests along the top of it, old spider webs along the banisters, and dust literally everywhere. I go to open the door. It's locked. That's weird. My tower doesn't even have a lock. I peer through the glass, squinting to see through the thick layer of dust on the inside of the window. It's dark. Darker than it should be. I can make out the main radio on the table next to a stack of what looks like newspapers and files. The bed, messy and unkempt. There's a bag peeking out from under the table. I'm guessing it's her rucksack. From what I can see, there's no books, no deck of cards, nothing to keep her occupied during the day. How the hell does she stay sane? I decide to radio her. I've not trekked all this way not to meet her. I pick up my radio. Allison, come in. Hey, fast reply. What's up, Oscar? Hey, just wondering, I say, as I decide to investigate a bit before letting her know I'm here. Whereabouts are you? I'm in my tower. Why? She replies. What the fuck? I'm certain this is the right tower. This is her tower. I'm looking into it, and nobody's there. She's lying to me. It's nothing, I lie, trying to mask my trembling voice behind one of confidence. Just some campers on the edge of my zone. I'll deal with them. No reply. Did she buy it? Does she believe me? Reply, Allison. I need to know if you believe me or not. Cool. Nice one, Oscar. Thanks for that. Okay, thank fuck she believes me. I think. I head down the tower and hide behind a tree nearby. I wanted to scope this out. Maybe she was just heading back to the tower and said so that she was already there. It could just be a misunderstanding. So I'm going to scope the situation out and see what happens. It's been over 30 minutes. There has not been any sign of her. No sign of anything. In fact, this area is completely quiet, completely dead. Where's the rustle of animals, the sound of distant hikers? It's just so quiet. Too quiet. During the wait, I had told myself, if she doesn't come back soon, I'm going to break into her tower. I have no idea if that's illegal or not, and it's technically the property of my employer, right? I am guessing it's illegal, but I need to investigate. I need to do it soon before it gets dark. I hit the door with the butt of my machete just above the doorknob. The loud bang breaks the eerie silence, followed by the creak of the door as it swings open, freezing me for a second as I wait for something to happen. Nothing. I head inside, and dust hits me, and I hold myself back from coughing. I need to be quiet, and I need to be fast. The inside of the hut is cold, weirdly colder than the temperature outside. I walk over to the stacks of newspapers and files. The headline, the first newspaper I see, gives me chills. Sister hikers missing. I skim the article. It's these woods. 2 sisters missing. Was this Allison's sister? She only told me she had one sister missing. Was she the other one? This doesn't make sense. I flick through the rest of the newspapers, most just reiterating that the 2 sisters were still missing, until one sister found after being missing for 3 weeks. The article stated that one of the sisters had been found alive and well, but the other was still missing. It says that they were separated after getting lost in the woods. Allison hadn't mentioned she had also gotten lost, if this was about her. Did she consider it too personal? Or did she lie? I turned my attention to the files. Inside, one piece of paper. It's headlined Oscar. What the fuck? Under it, information about me. Information I had shared with her about my divorce and why I took the job, my age, what I look like. Maybe she kept these just so she wouldn't forget? An odd way of trying to be friendly? Wait, how does she know that? We've never met. How does she know what I look like? Something fucking weird is going on. I turned my attention to the bag under the bed. It's a big rucksack, dark blue. I pull it out and open it up. Inside, clothes. They look like male clothes, t-shirts, hiking pants, a rain jacket. I dig deeper. I find a hammer and then a wrench. Nothing too out of the ordinary there. The next thing I take out a pair of sunglasses. Engraved on the side, R.S. Initials? Definitely not Allison's, but somebody's. I reach my hand to the bottom of the bag and feel a small metallic object. I lift it out, and it's a pocket knife. It's a very nice knife. Looks like something that someone has personally designed. It's got a golden outline enlaced through. It's a mix of wavy silver and black designs. There's something engraved on this, too, in very small letters. To my love, to you, Harvey. What the fuck? Why does she have Harvey's knife? Is this his stuff? Is this where his stuff went after he disappeared? I'm not taking anything. She'll know I was here. But I'm getting out of here. I don't feel safe. As I stand to leave, I hear a familiar voice behind me. Allison's voice. You know, all she wants is to make you smile. I spin around. Behind me, a woman stands between me and the door. She's slightly shorter than me, with messy, unwashed blonde hair that expels out in all angles. Clothes, long, light brown hiking pants ruined by old dirt and stains. Similarly, her red, light checkered shirt looks like it's seen better days. Wrinkled, dirty, a rip stemming from one end of the sleeves. Her face, normal, or at least human. The bright blue irises of her eyes provided a direct contrast to their red, bloodshot surroundings. She doesn't look like she's slept in weeks. Her frenzied eyes screaming insanity, looking at me maniacally, with her hands drooped by her sides. Her frail body is one of malnourishment, one of abandonment. Allison? I stammer. What do you mean she wants me to smile? She just wants you to smile, Allison replied, still staring at me with a crazed look in her eyes. Right. Allison, what is going on? I try to act confident. Are you okay? Allison moves toward the bed. I circle around the hut as she does so. I'm now by the door. A good start. She sits down on the bed and looks down at the dusty floor. I see a tear run down her face. This is a broken woman. We went missing, Allison gulped. Both of us. And I got saved, and she didn't. I couldn't tell him what I did, but it was bad. And now She trailed off. What did you do, Allison? I'm ready to reach my machete at any moment. We got lost, and we were lost for so long. She kept telling me, "It's gonna be okay, Allison. They'll find us, Allison." But they didn't for so long. And I got so hungry. She was always so positive, so always smiling, but food, we couldn't catch anything. Nothing worked. We tried, Oscar. I promise we tried. Allison said, her voice straining. Okay, okay, Allison. I know you tried. I know you tried. What happened? She looked up. I jumped, but she only continued to speak. She was looking at me, smiling when I pushed her. I pushed her far, off the side. It was a moment of weakness, a moment of hunger. She fell so far. Her arms, they cracked. She wasn't moving. I was so hungry. She looked back to the ground. She died how she lived, smiling. My stomach churned. She killed her own fucking sister. I heard hunger makes you do crazy things. I heard it makes you do anything for food. But after I pushed her, I couldn't do it. She looked at me once more, tears welling in her otherwise frantic eyes. And the next day they found me. My stomach dropped. They found her only a day after that. Whilst I was scared of her, I felt a sense of sympathy for Allison. I couldn't live with that. A moment of madness defining my life forever. And for what? For literally nothing. And then she found me, Allison whispered, as she looked back to the ground, another tear rolling down her cheek. Who found you? I asked, hoping it wasn't who I'll think she'll say, my blood frozen. My sister. Still smiling, still hungry, Allison murmured. She's taking revenge on me. She's taking revenge on you. Allison stood up and looked back at me. On all of you. I took a small step back, backing out of the hut, not taking eyes off of Allison. What have you done? I asked. She blames you all. You couldn't find her. It's your job. Our job to find her. Instead, she found me. And I won't lose her again. Allison starts walking slowly towards me. Allison, I didn't even fucking work here. I had never been to these woods. I'm starting to panic as I take steps back. Allison, we can get you help. We can get you out. She gets hungrier every time. She's never satisfied anymore. There's no getting out. As she said this, I knew why the surrounding woods were so quiet. Harvey even worked out the 10 rules, and she still got to him eventually. Rules not even I can work out. Allison, for the first time, starts to smile. And Oscar, she's so hungry now. She lunges at me with a sudden sharp shriek, arms outstretched. Her weak frame is easy to overpower. I roll her to her side and with a swift movement push her away from me. She stumbles and her foot slides off the side of the balcony. She loses her balance, hitting the wooden floor with a thud before falling from the side of the tower. It all happened so fast. I fell to the floor as I pushed her, mostly out of shock. I hear her hit something on the way down. Probably the steps, followed by the solid thud as she meets the ground below. She didn't once scream as she fell. Holy fuck, I just killed her. Holy fucky fuck. I scramble to my feet and rush down the stairs, hoping she's not dead. When I reach the bottom, I see her lying around 10 feet from the tower's base, face down, arms broken, twisted. Small pool of blood oozing from her head and feeding the soil below. Unmoving. I'm running back to my tower, stopping briefly only when the exhaustion takes over. I should be able to get there before it's dark. Fuck this, I'm getting out of these woods. Allison's fucking insane. She attacked me. It was self-defense. She's fucking insane. Something she said is really sticking with me. Harvey worked out the 10 rules. On the sheet that I now know is written by Harvey, there were only 9. What is the 10th rule? This at least explains how Harvey survived for so long, a year. The poor man before her, Rick, who I now suspect owned the sunglasses at Allison's Hust, only survived a week, but Harvey had 9 rules. 9 ways the smiling lady can get you and how to avoid her. I'm not sticking around to find out what the 10th rule is. I'm getting out of these woods. I'm still running back. I can feel something watching me. I see my tower. It's almost dark. I don't know how the fuck I'm going to get to my car. I don't want to be walking these woods at night. So I've decided I'm going to sleep at the bunker. I figure that's where Harvey spent his nights when he wasn't at the tower. I figure that's the key to how he survived so long. And it's even saved me in the past. I'm going to run up my tower, grab my main rucksack, and go to the bunker. I'm on the verge of passing out from my dehydration, so I'm in need of some more water, which is also up in my tower. I grab my things and go in and out. I'm in my tower, frantically gather my things, and I turn to leave. I hear something. It's faint, easy to miss, but it's there. I hold my breath, stop moving, listening for what the sound is. Long, slow, quiet sounds. I hear scratching. Rule 7. If you hear any scratching at any point, either on your hut or by the outhouse, turn off all radios and hide under your covers until the scratching stops. Fucking kidding me. She knows. She knows I'm trying to leave. Frozen in place, hoping the scratching will stop, knowing that if it doesn't, I'll have to follow the rules. I turn to my radio. Over it, in the woods directly below, I see a pale face looking up at me. The same stringy, dark hair dangling from her head. The same wide, sinister smile plastered across her face. Her white skin illuminated by the surrounding darkness. I see none of her body, just her face, emerging from the black night. She's looking up at me. Her excited eyes locked with mine. She knows I'm trying to escape. I have to spend one last night here, and I feel like she's going to do everything she can to get me. I break our gaze and turn the radios off before jumping under my covers. What Allison said to me is ringing in my mind. She's so hungry now. The scratching stops shortly after I go under my covers. I can literally feel her hunger in the air, looming above my tower, focusing in on me. I peek from my bed once I'm certain the scratching noises have stopped. I don't want her to catch me off guard. I want to be ready for anything she throws at me. I stand up and circle around the balcony of my hut, scanning the surrounding area. Where she stood before, she no longer does. I knew she was fast. Previously, she had beaten me back to my tower when I found her crying in the woods. She could be anywhere. I turn back to walk to my hut. I'm looking out one of the windows as the reflection of the dull lamp starts to flicker behind me. Shit! Rule 4. At night, always sleep with your lamp on. If it starts to flicker, quickly run to turn on your main light until morning. If your lamp flickers off completely before you can do this. Hide under your bed until morning. My eyes adjust as I look at the reflection of the lamp. She's there. Right in front of me, through the glass, standing on my balcony. It's her. Her broken arms distended, her straggly, wet hair, her eyes large, her smile wide. Rule 6. If you wake up and see the smiling woman staring through your window, hide under your covers and hold your breath. She will come into your hut, and you will feel her breathing right over you as if she was hovering over you. Do not breathe. This will last only a few seconds. Once you feel her leave, turn on the main light until morning. The lamp flickers once more, then shuts off, plunging me into darkness. I have 2 rules that I need to follow. 2 conflicting rules. I can't look away from her, but I know I have to turn on the main light. Her neck suddenly snaps to the side and she starts to walk fast. I mean fast! Stomping loud with each step as she makes her way to the balcony towards the door on the other side. Oh, fuck! I turn and sprint to the main light. She's about halfway to the door when I turn it on, and now I have to decide whether I hide under the bed or under the covers. I choose the covers. Rule 6 specified she will come into your hut. And she's about to do that. I run toward my bed and pull the covers over my eyes. As I do so, I see the door of my hut open. I hear her loud, fast footsteps charging towards me. But I only see darkness now as I lay beneath the thick covers. I hold my breath. I can feel her. Just as the rule said I would, she's right above me. I feel her breath. It's cold. My eyes are shut, but I know she's there. I'm trying to hold my breath. My heart is pounding out of my chest, my stomach churning in fear. I refuse to breathe. Yet she waits, desperate for me to do so. What happens if I breathe? Will she come in here and now? Will she possess me? My chest hurts. I can't hold it for much longer. She can sense it. She senses I'm struggling. Her exasperated breaths are getting more and more excited. I feel her hair dangling either side of me from above the covers, wet. I can't do it. I need to breathe. This is it. I'm fucked. My mouth opens. She's gone. She just vanished. I hold on for 3-4 more seconds, long as I physically can, before coughing and gasping for air, but she's gone. No more cold breath, no more presence. I'm alone again. I peel back the covers. My hut's door is wide open, swinging in the wind. My main light is still on, as is my lamp once more. She used the flickering lamp as an attempt to try to get me to fuck up? To choose the wrong rule? If I had chosen to hide under the bed, would she have killed me? It's been quiet for a few hours. My main light is still on, so is my lamp. I feel slightly safer, but I think that's her game plan. Lure me into a false sense of security. I'm not letting my guard down. Thank fuck I didn't. I see a fucking campfire right by my tower. The glare of the light from the hut makes it harder to see, but I see it. In fact, I see more than one. There are campfires all around my tower. The glare of the light from the hut makes it harder to see, but I see it. In fact, they're all around. I walk toward the balcony edge. I count 6 fires. By each fire, there are dark, human figures with their backs turned toward me. What the fuck? They're all standing, one per fire, looking into it. The figures are of different sizes. One looks like a child. I can't make out any specific features in the darkness, just their shapes. By the 6th fire, there is no figure. Why is there no figure there? Just as my eyes start to adjust to the darkness below, the figures begin to fall into their fires, one by one. The first to fall into its fire resembles a man. The figure is tall, skinny. He drops face first into the flames, almost willingly. As he squirms, the flames engulf him, making it impossible to make out any of his features. His screams pierce the air. As I stare in horror, another figure, a woman, then falls into her fire. She screams as the flames cover her, writhing in the fire, but she does not attempt to escape it. Next is the smallest figure, the figure of a child, a boy. As he falls face down in the fire, I gasp. I can't bring myself to scream. My whole body's in shock. The child silent but twitching violently as the fire burns him. Fourth, the largest silhouette, wide, sturdy shape of a large man. He falls into his fire, grunting in pain, holding back screams, but barely moving as he burns. Lastly, the shape of a woman. I turn to her before she falls. I need to see. I run inside and grab my flashlight and run back to where I stood before. As she falls into her fire, I shine it upon her, catching only a glimpse of her messy blonde hair and red checkered shirt. A rip along its sleeve before the flames take over. There's just one fire left burning, the 6th fire. The fire with no figure by it. As the screams of those below me echo into the night, I fear the faint sound of a woman crying somewhere in the trees below. Oscar! A voice calls out just as the first rays of sun peek out through the trees. Oscar, are you there? I run to the balcony, albeit cautious, and see Sam, Mark's daughter, standing below. She's in the same clothes as the last time I saw her. Sam! I yell. Sam, we have to get out of here! There! Oscar! She shouts back. Oscar, I know everything. I know about Allison, about her sister. I know about Harvey and his family, about Rick. I know everything. We have to get out of here, Sam. We can't, Oscar, she cries out. We have to burn her. We have to burn Allison's sister. Why the fuck do we have to burn her? I scream. That's Rule 10, Oscar. She's going to follow you no matter where you go. If you leave this place, she'll be a step behind you forever, unless you burn her. That's Rule 10. Find her body and burn it. Rule 10. Burn her body, or she will chase you forever. How the fuck are we supposed to find her body? I shout, defeated. I know where it is, Oscar. Sam smiles warmly in an attempt to calm me. Let me explain everything on the way. It's nearby. I've survived all the other rules. Now I just need to survive one more. I grab my machete. It makes sense that the smiling lady follows you out of the woods. That's why Harvey couldn't leave, and that's why neither could Allison. That's why Allison said there's no getting out. Because there isn't. Unless we burn her. And Sam? Allison said Mark didn't have a daughter. But was that just to throw me off? To turn me against a potential ally? Either way, I don't fully trust Sam. Not by a long shot. Definitely not until I hear what she has to say. So I grab my machete. I edge down the steps, approaching Sam. She's looking at me. Her eyes dart to the machete, but she seems like she understands my caution. Why didn't you tell me this all before? I ask. If you know everything, why didn't you tell me when we first met? I didn't know who to trust, Oscar, Sam replies. I had known Harvey, and we trusted nobody, not fully, except each other. And Harvey's dead now. I'm solemn with my words. How did you know him? Yes, she looks down. He is. That was confirmed last night. I struck up a friendship with him when he worked here. I'd bring him extra food and take runs just to see him. That's why I'm in these woods now. I was looking for him. But after last night, it's clear. Yeah, he's dead. How was it confirmed last night? I ask. She seems genuinely heartbroken. The smiling lady, she seems to focus one victim at a time. While she's hunting someone, it seems like she ignores everyone else. That's why Allison kept feeding her people, so that her sister wouldn't turn on her, Sam explains. My breathing is heavy, my heart racing. She carries on. Last night, I was out looking for Harvey as I've been doing. I saw the fires around your tower, and I saw those figures falling into them, people she's taken. One of those figures resembled Harvey, and some of them, the others, his family. I saw the sixth fire, the one she made for you, and I heard her crying to try to lure you out. She focuses on her prey, one at a time, which confirms that you're her target. She's already got Harvey. She never gives up on her prey until she gets them. And it's you now. You have to burn her. But I killed Allison, not her. I pushed her when she attacked me, so why didn't I see her fall into the fire last night? I'm shaking. I hadn't actually said aloud that I had killed her before. Yes, I thought you might have. The smiling lady wouldn't have attacked her while she was focused on you, but it doesn't mean that since Allison's death, the smiling lady hasn't taken her, hasn't eaten her. She's always hungry. It's all she cares about. Why didn't you just burn her fucking body? I shout. This is fucked up. I'm desperate to find a way out of this nightmare. It has to be you. It has to be the one she's hunting. I fucking tried. But I only found her body after Harvey disappeared. Whenever I try to burn it, the flames just won't light. I don't fucking understand it, but I know it has to be you. She lit the fire for you last night, and it has to be you who lights hers. How the fuck can I trust you? Tears rolling down my cheeks. It made sense why she was looking for Harvey. She needed him to burn her body. Sam pleads. I hid in a bunker last night. That's how I'm here so early. It was Harvey's bunker, Oscar. The smiling lady doesn't know about it. That's how he survived so long. Can I show you where it is if... I know where it is, I whisper. I have no choice. I have to trust her. I have to burn the body. I quickly go upstairs and grab my backpack. In it, I put my lighter and a canister of kerosene. I'm going to follow Sam, but I'm not letting go of my machete. Of course. It's in a fucking cave. On the way, Sam explained that after being pushed, Allison's sister had crawled there in an attempt to find shelter, but had succumbed to her injuries within the cave. She explained that's why I may have seen her crawling, because the smiling lady is replaying her final moments on a loop, which drives her hate. And also explains why she's always smiling. Allison said she was smiling when she pushed her. As Sam stands by the cave, creviced into the side of the steep hill, I shine my flashlight into its entrance. I don't see much. It's a thin, tunnel-like structure, around 8 feet across, 15 feet tall. There isn't much room to maneuver should we run into trouble. I can't see far enough into it to see where it ends. We enter the cave.
She's near the end of the cave, Sam whispers. There's like a turn at the end, maybe 300 feet inward. We should be safe. I've never seen her ghost in the day before.
Sam trails off. She leads the way. I'm keeping a close eye on her, but that becomes harder the further we get in. Soon, we're enveloped in darkness. The light from our flashlights, it's all I can see as we leave the daylight behind and enter the dark. Sound soon becomes non-existent. Our footsteps and shallow breathing are only company. Almost as if out of nowhere we meet a wall. To the left, a downward slope that takes us deeper into the cave's abyss.
Why the fuck would she go so deep? I whisper. If she was wanting to be rescued. She didn't, Sam's hushed reply. She was at the entrance when she died. Someone moved her further in to protect her. I think Allison.
We walk deeper. 10 minutes later, the cave expands. Usually, spending this amount of time in a dark atmosphere means your eyes adjust. However, mine haven't. It's almost as if this is a type of darkness I hadn't experienced before, or if the smiling lady had put some effect on us. I don't fucking know. I just know that other than the light from my flashlight and Sam's in front of me, I can't see shit. A crack behind me. A quick, snapping crack. My heart jumps, and I spin around to shine my flashlight where the sound originated. I see only legs, for a split second, crawling away from me into the darkness from which I came. Bare, dirty calves of what looked like a woman shooting out of sight. Fuck! Something's in here with us. And it's alive. The smiling lady is here. I turn to Sam. She's gone. What the fuck? I'm all alone. Sam's flashlight on the ground. What the fuck? Where is she? Do I call out? Fuck. I don't know. I'm gonna leave her flashlight. I need one hand to grip my machete. I can't go back. The smiling lady is behind me. I need to find her body. I need to burn it. I need to help Sam. I shone my flashlight around looking for Sam when I see the backpack leaning against the wall's cave. I carefully move towards it, knowing something is watching me from the darkness. My sweaty palms making the machete more difficult to grip. I'm squeezing it as hard as I can. I get to the backpacks, quickly scanning around the cave with a flashlight, but I see nothing but rock. I turn my attention to the bag's contents. It's already open. It doesn't look like it's been here too long, maybe under a week. I hurriedly go through it. An old tarp, a lighter, and the same small canister of kerosene I had taken, the same type that was provided for me at the tower. Also in the bag, a knife. The same style of knife I'd found in Allison's tower, only bigger. The same gold outline with silver and black designs swimming through it. On the knife, engraved, "Your pair of knives, our pair of hearts, my Harvey." Another one of Harvey's knives. This is Harvey's bag. I flick the knife open, recently used. Its previously sharp edge now blunt, stained with the remnants of stone. I shine my flashlight on the wall the bag leaned against. Writing scratched into the rock face. 10. Sam lies. Cracking behind me.
I spin around. I see Sam. She's smiling. Sam? I start. Her eyes are locked with mine. She sees me through the darkness. Her arms start to break, almost as if being broken by the air around them. They snap with jolting movements. Her elbows bend backwards as her jones jut out, hugging the skin under her forearms. With every crack, her smile grows wider. Soon, it is unnaturally sprawled across her face. Her eyes wide with glee. Her skin grows whiter, her hair longer. She is now unrecognizable as Sam. I now know her as the Smiling Lady. I had fallen for it. Just as Harvey, Dad. She needs the darkness. That's why she roams at night. That's why I felt like being watched as I left Allison's tower. I was, but she couldn't do anything as it wasn't dark. She watched me as Sam during the day, but attacked me as the Smiling Lady during the night. That note in Allison's tower explaining what I look like? Only Sam had seen me before then. Fuck! I feel so fucking stupid. I was safe from her in the daylight, but it's dark now, and she's changing. She died in the dark, and now she lives in the dark. I stand up, my machete shaking in my hand. I edge towards her. I'm ready to strike. In an explosion of movement either side of me, I'm grabbed. The creatures crawl at me as I feel their bony hands and arms dragging me down. I count 5 of them as I struggle against the grips. There's too many. They're too strong. My flashlight's fallen from my grip and now shines in my direction. I can make out the faces of my attackers. Harvey, his wife, his child, a tall man, Rick, and Allison. They hold me down. Allison's broken arms cutting me as I struggle. Her shattered bones sharp. As they all pin me against the ground, they smile. I catch a glimpse of Sam. She lunges out of the darkness and bites into my chest. A new man lives in my tower now. He has a family. A dog, too, who visit him. We only leave the darkness when she tells us to. She doesn't want to lose us. I smile now. And when she tells us to burn, I burn too. I'm writing this to warn you of the Smiling Lady in the woods. Do not try to find me. This will be the last time I speak to you all. Do not come looking for me. I belong to her now. And she will never lose me. That was the end of that story. Again, that story was written by Squishy Cabbage. Excellent story. I hope it brought a little chill to you. Give you a little fear. I think it's time to move on to the next story. One moment. Alrighty. Grab the next set of stories to read, and we will enjoy the evening. I hope everyone is having a good evening. I hope that the network issue isn't quite as difficult as we had previously, but we are going to continue with the stories regardless.
Problem. Come on. Alrighty. Looks like the next story we will do tonight from Edgar Allan Poe, Pit and the Pendulum. Kind of enjoy Poe. He had such a twisted mind. He definitely deserved to spend time with us here in this asylum. Impia tortorum locos hic et turbia forivoris, sanguinis incogniti non satia alut. Sospete nuc patria fracto nic funeris antro, mors ubi dira fruct vita sosque patent. I was sick. Sick unto death with that long agony. And when they at length unbound me, and I was permitted to sit, I felt my senses were leaving me. The sentence, the dread sentence of death, was the last distinct accentuation that reached my ears. After that, the sound of the inquisitorial voices seemed to merge in one dreamy, indeterminate hum. It conveyed to my soul the idea of revolution. Perhaps from its association in fancy with burr of a mill wheel, this only for a brief period, for presently I heard no more. Yet for a while I saw, but with how terrible an exaggeration. I saw the lips of the black-robed judges. They appeared to me white, whiter than the sheet upon which I traced these words, thin, even to grotesqueness, thin, with the intensity of their expression, firmness, of immovable resolution, of stern contempt of human torture. I saw that the decrees of what to me was fate were still issuing from those lips. I saw them writhe with deadly locution. I watched them fashion the syllables of my name, and I shuddered because no sound succeeded. I saw, too, for a few moments, of delirious horror, the soft and nearly imperceptible waving of the sable draperies which wrapped the walls of the apartment. And then my vision fell upon the 7 fall candles on the table. At first they wore the aspect of charity, and seemed white, slender angels who would save me. But then all at once, there came the most deadly nausea over my spirit. I felt every fiber of my frame thrill as if I had touched the wire of a galvanic battery, while the angel forms became meaningless specters with heads of flame, and I saw from them there would be no help. And then there stole into my fancy, like a rich musical note, the thought of what sweet rest there must be in the grave. The thought came gently and stealthily, and it seemed long before it attained full appreciation, but just as my spirit came at length properly to feel and entertain it, the figures of the judges vanished as if magically from before me. The tall candles dank into nothingness. Their flames went out utterly. The blackness of darkness supervened. All sensations appeared swallowed up in the mad rushing descent as of the soul of Hades. Then silence and stillness and night were their universe. I had swooned, but still would not say that all consciousness was lost. That of which there remained, I still not attempt to define or even describe, yet all was not lost. On the deepest slumber, no. In delirium, no. In a swoon, no.
In death, no. Even in the grave, all is not lost. Else there is no immortality for man. Arising from the most profound of slumbers, we break the gossamers of web of some dream, yet in a second afterward, so frail maybe that we have been, we remember not that we have dreamed. In the return to life from the swoon, there are two stages. First, that of the sense of mental or spiritual. Secondly, that sense physical existence. It seems improbable that if upon reaching the second stage, we could recall the impressions of the first, we should find these impressions eloquent in memories of the gulf beyond. And that gulf is what? How at least shall we distinguish the shadows from those of the tomb? But if the impressions of what I have termed first stage are not at will recalled, yet after a long interval go, they have not become unbidden, while we marvel whence they came. He who has never swooned is not he who finds the strange palaces and wildly familiar faces and coals that glow. Is not he who beholds floating in midair sad visions that many may not view. Is not he who ponders over the perfume of some novel flower. Is not he whose brain grows bewildered with the meaning of some musical cadence which has never before arrested his attention. Amid frequent and thoughtful endeavors to remember, amid earnest struggles to gather some token of state seeming nothingness, my soul had lapsed. There had been moments which I had dreamed of success. There had been brief, very brief, periods when I had conjured up remembrances which the lucid reason of a later epoch assures me could have referenced only the condition of seemingly unconsciousness. These shadows of memory tell indistinctly of tall figures that lifted and bore me in silence down, still down, till a hideous dizziness oppressed me at the mere idea of interminableness of the descent. They tell also of a vague horror at my heart on account of that heart's unnatural stillness. Then comes a sense of sudden motionless throughout all things, as if those who bore me, a ghastly train, had outrun in their descent the limits of the limitless and paused with the weariness of their toil. After this I call to mind flatness and dampness, and then all is madness, madness of a memory which busies itself among forbidden things. Very suddenly, there came back to my soul motion and sound, the tumultuous motion of the heart, and in my ears the sound of its beating. Then the pause in which all is blank. Then again sound, then motion and touch. A tingling sensation pervaded my frame. Then mere consciousness of existence without thought. Condition which lasted longer. Then very suddenly, thought and shuddering, terror and earnest endeavor to comprehend my true state. Then a sudden, strong desire to lapse into insensibility. And then a rushing revival of the soul in a successful effort to move. And now a full memory of the trial, of the judges, of the sable draperies, of the sentence, of the sickness, of the swoon. Then entire forgetfulness of all that followed, of all that a later day, and much earnestness of endeavor had enabled my vaguely to recall. So far I had not opened up my eyes. I felt that I lay on my back, unbound. I reached out my hand, and it fell heavily upon something damp and hard. There I suffered it to remain for many minutes, while I strove to imagine where and what I could be. I longed, yet dared not to imagine or employ my vision.
I dreaded the first glance at objects around me. I was not that I feared to look upon things horrible, but I grew aghast lest there be nothing to see. At length, with wild desperation of my heart, I quickly unclosed my eyes. My worst thoughts were then confirmed. Blackness, eternal, encompassed me. I struggled for breath. The intensity of the darkness seemed to oppress and stifle me. The atmosphere was tolerably close. I still lay quietly and made effort to exercise my reason. I brought to mind the inquisitorial proceedings and attempted from that point to deduce my real condition. The sentence had passed, and it appeared to me that a very long interval of time had since elapsed. Yet not for the moment did I suppose myself actually dead. Such a supposition, notwithstanding what we read in fiction, is altogether inconsistent with real existence. But where and in what state was I? The condemned to death, I knew, perished usually at the autos de fe. One of those had been held at the very night of the day of my trial. Had I been remanded to my dungeon to await the next sacrifice, which would not take place for many months, this, I at once saw, could not be. Victims had been in immediate demand. Moreover, my dungeon, as well as all the condemned cells at Toledo, had stone floors, and light was not altogether excluded. Fearful idea now suddenly drove the blood in torrents from my heart, and in a brief moment I once more elapsed into insensibility. Upon recovering, I at once started, my feet trembling convulsively in every fiber. I thrust my arms widely above and around me in all directions. I felt nothing, yet dreaded to move a step, lest I should be impeded by the walls of a tomb. Perspiration burst from every pore and stood in cold, big beads upon my forehead. The agony of suspense grew at length intolerable, and I cautiously moved forward with my arms extended and my eyes straining from their sockets in hope of catching some faint ray of light. I proceeded for many paces, but still all was blackness and vacancy. I breathed more freely. It seemed evident that mine was not at least the most hideous of fates. And now, as I still continued to step cautiously onward, there came thronging upon my recollection 1,000 vague rumors of the horrors of Toledo. Son of a biscuit. One moment, please, while we deal with this. Okay, we are back. And now, as I still continued to step cautiously onward, there came thronging upon my recollection 1,000 vague rumors of the horrors of Toledo, of the dungeons. There had been strange things narrated. Fables, I had always deemed them, yet strange and too ghastly to repeat save in whisper. Was I left to perish of starvation in this subterranean world of darkness? Or what fate, perhaps even more fearful, awaited me? That the result would be death, and a death of more than customary bitterness, I knew too well the character of my judges to doubt. The mode and the hour were all that occupied or distracted me. My outstretched hands at length encountered some solid obstruction. It was a wall, seemingly of stone masonry, very smooth,
slimy, and cold. I followed it up, stepping with very careful distrust with which certain antique narratives had inspired me. This process, however, afforded me no means of ascertaining the dimensions of my dungeon as I might make its circuit and return to the point whence I set out, without being aware of the fact so perfectly uniform seemed the wall. I therefore sought the knife which had been in my pocket when let into the inquisitorial chamber, but it was gone. My clothes had been exchanged for a wrapper of coarse serge. I had thought of forcing the blade in some minute crevice of the masonry as to identify my point of departure. The difficulty, nevertheless, was but trivial, although in the disorder of my fancy it seemed at first insuperable. I tore a part of the hem of the robe and placed the fragment at full length and at right angles of the wall. In groping my way around the prison, I could not fail to encounter this rag upon completing the circuit. So at least, I thought. But I had not counted upon the extent of the dungeon, or upon my own weakness. The ground was moist and slippery. I staggered onward for some time when I stumbled and fell. My excessive fatigue induced me to remain prostrate, and sleep soon overtook me as I lay. Upon waking and stretching forth an arm, I found beside me a loaf and a pitcher of water. I was much too exhausted to reflect upon the circumstances, but ate and drank with avidity. Shortly afterward, I resumed my tour around the prison, and with much toil came at last upon the fragment of the serge. Up to the period when I had counted 52 paces, and upon resuming my walk I had counted 48 more when I arrived at the rag. There were in all, then, 100 paces, and, admitting 2 paces in the yard, I presumed the dungeon to be 50 yards in circuit. I had met, however, with many angles in the wall, and thus I could not help supposing it to be. I had little object, certainly no hope in these researches, but a vague curiosity prompted me to continue them. Quitting the wall, I resolved to cross the area of the enclosure. At first, I proceeded with extreme caution, for the floor, although seemingly of solid material, was treacherous with slime. At length, however, I took courage and did not hesitate to step firmly, endeavoring to cross in as a direct line as possible. I had advanced some 10 or 12 paces in this manner when the remnant of the torn hem of my robe became entangled between my legs. I stepped on it and fell violently on my face. In the confusion attending my fall, I did not immediately apprehend of a somewhat startling circumstance, which yet, in a few seconds afterward, and while I still lay prostrate, arrested my attention. It was this. My chin rested upon the floor of the prison, but my lips and the upper portion of my head, although seemingly at a less elevation than my chin, touched nothing. At the same time, my forehead seemed to be bathed in a clammy vapor, and a peculiar smell of decaying fungus arose to my nostrils. I put my arm forward and shuddered to find I had fallen to the very brink of a circular pit, whose extent, of course, I had no means of ascertaining at the moment. Groping about the masonry just below the margin, I succeed in dislodging a small fragment, and let it fall into the abyss. For many seconds I hearkened to its reverberations as it dashed against the sides of the chasm in its descent. At length, there was a sullen plunge into waters, succeeded by loud echoes. And at the same moment there came a sound resembling a quick opening and as a rapid closing of a door overhead, while a faint gleam of light flashed suddenly through the gloom, and suddenly faded away. I saw clearly the doom which had been prepared for me, and congratulated myself upon the timely accident by which I had escaped. Another stop before my fall, and the world had seen me no more. And the death just avoided was of that very character which I had regarded as fabulous, frivolous in tales respecting the Inquisition. To the victims of its tyranny there was the choice of death with its direst physical agonies, or death with its most hideous moral horrors. I had been reserved for the latter. By long suffering, my nerves had been unstrung until I trembled at the sound of my own voice, and had become in every respect a fitting subject for the species of torture which awaited me. Shaking in every limb, I groped my way up to the wall, resolved there to perish rather than risk the terrors of the well, which my imagination now pictured in various positions about the dungeon. In other conditions of the mind, I might have had the courage to end my misery all at once by plunging into one of these abysses. But now I was the veriest of cowards. Neither could I forget what I had read of these pits. That the sudden extinction of life formed no part in their most horrible plan. Agitation of spirit kept me awake for many long hours, but at length I again slumbered. Upon arousing, I found myself on my side, as before, a loaf and a pitcher of water. A burning thirst consumed me, and I emptied the vessel at a draught. It must have been drugged, for scarcely had I drunk it, therefore I became irresistibly drowsy. A deep sleep fell upon me, a sleep like that of death. How long it lasted, of course, I know not. But when, once again, I unclosed my eyes, the objects around me were invisible. By a wild, sulphurous luster, the origin of which I could not at first determine, I was enabled to see the extent and aspect of the prison. Its size, I had been greatly mistaken. The whole circuit of its walls did not exceed 25 yards. For some minutes, this fact occasioned me a world of vain trouble. Vain, indeed, for what could be of less importance under the terrible circumstances which environed me than the merest dimensions of my dungeon? But my soul took a wild interest in the trifles, and I busied myself in endeavors to account for the error I had committed in my measurement. The truth at length flashed upon me. In my first attempt at exploration, I had counted 52 paces, up to the period when I fell. I must then have been within a pace or two of the fragment of the surge. In fact, I had nearly performed the circuit of the vault. I then slept, and upon awakening, I must have returned upon my steps, thus supposing that the circuit nearly double that it actually was. My confusion of mind prevented me from observing that I began my tour with the wall on my left and ended it with the wall on my right. I had been deceived, too, in respect to the shape of the enclosure. In feeling my way, I had found many angles, and thus deduced an idea of great irregularity. So potent is the effect of total darkness upon one arousing from lethargy or sleep. The angles were simply those of a few slight depressions or niches at odd intervals. The general shape of the prison was square. What I had taken for masonry now seemed to be iron or some other metal in huge plates whose sutures or joints occasioned the depression. The entire surface of this metallic enclosure was rudely daubed in all the hideous and repulsive devices to which charnel superstition of the monks had given rise. The figures of fiends, in aspects of menace, with skeleton forms, and more other really fearful images overspread and disfigured the walls. I observed that the outlines of these monstrosities were sufficiently distinct, but that the colors seemed faded and blurred, as if from the effects of a damp atmosphere. And now I noticed the floor, too, which was of stone. In the center yawned the circular pit from whose jaws I had escaped, but it was the only one in the dungeon. All this I saw indistinctly, and by much effort, for my personal condition had been greatly changed during slumber. I now lay upon my back, and at full length on a species of low framework of wood. To this I had been securely bound by a long strap, resembling a circingle. It passed in many convolutions about my limbs and body, leaving at liberty only my head and my left arm, to such extent that I could, by dint of much exertion, supply myself with food from the earthen dish which lay by my side on the floor. I saw to my horror that the pitcher had been removed. I say to my horror because I was consumed with an intolerable thirst. This thirst, it appeared to be the design of my persecutors to stimulate, for the food of the dish was meat pungently seasoned. Looking upward, I surveyed the ceiling of my prison. It was some 30 or 40 feet overhead, and constructed much as the side walls. In one of its panels, a very singular figure riveted my whole attention. It was the painted figure of Time, as he is commonly represented, save that in lieu of a scythe, he held what at a casual glance I supposed to be the pictured image of a huge pendulum, such as we see on antique clocks. There was something, however, in the appearance of this machine which caused me to regard it more attentively. While I gazed directly upward at it, for its position was immediately over my own, I fancied I saw it in motion. In an instant afterward, the fancy was confirmed. Its sweep was brief and, of course, slow. I watched it for some minutes, somewhat in fear, but more in wonder. Wearied, at length, with observing its dull movement, I turned my eyes upon the other objects in the cell. A slight noise attracted my notice, and looking to the floor, I saw several enormous rats traversing it. They had issued from the well, which just lay within my view to my right. Even then, while I gazed, they came up in troops, hurriedly, with ravenous eyes, allured by the scent of meat. From this, it required much effort and attention to scare them away. It might have been half an hour, perhaps an hour, for I could take but an imperfect note of time, before I again cast my eyes upward. What I then saw confounded and amazed me. The sweep of the pendulum had increased in extent by nearly a yard. As a natural consequence, its velocity was also much greater. But what mainly disturbed me was the idea that it had perceptibly descended. I now observed, with what horror it is needless to say, that its nether extremity formed of a crescent of glittering steel about a foot in length from horn to horn. The horns upward and under the edge evidently as keen as that of a razor. Like a razor, also, it seemed massy and heavy, tapering from the edge to a solid and broad structure above. It was appended by a weighty rod of brass, and the whole hissed as it swung through the air. I could no longer doubt the doom prepared to me by the monkish ingenuity of torture. My cognizance of the pit had become known to the inquisitorial agents. The pit whose horrors had been destined for so bold a reclusant as myself. The pit, typically of hell and regarded by rumor as ultima thule of all their punishments. The plunge into this pit I had avoided by the merest of accidents, and I knew that surprise or entrapment into torment formed an important portion of all the grotesquerie of the dungeon deaths. Having failed to fall, it was no part of the demon plan to hurl me into the abyss, and thus, there being no alternative, a different and milder destruction awaited me. Milder? I half smiled in my agony as I thought of such application of such a term. What boots it to tell the long, long hours of horror, more than mortal, during which I counted the rushing vibrations of the steel, inch by inch, line by line, with the descent only appreciable at intervals that seemed ages. Down and down it came. Days passed. It might have been that many days passed ere it swept so close over me as to fan me with its acrid breath. The odor of sharp steel forced itself into my nostrils. I prayed. I wearied heaven with my prayer for its more speedy descent. I grew frantically mad and struggled to force myself upward against the sweep of the fearful scimitar. And then I felt suddenly calm, and lay smiling at the glittering death as a child at some rare bauble. There was another interval of utter insensibility. It was brief upon again lapsing into life, there was no perceptible descent in the pendulum. But it might have been long, for all I knew there were demons who took note of my swoon and who could have arrested the vibration at pleasure. Upon my recovery, too, I felt very, inexpressibly sick and weak, as if through a long inanition. Even amid the agonies of that period, the human nature craved food. With painful effort, I outstretched my left arm as far as my bonds permitted and took possession of the small remnant which had been spared me by the rats. So put a portion of it within my lips, and there rushed to my mind half-formed the thought of joy, of hope. Yet, what business had I of hope? It was, as I say, a half-formed thought. Man had many such that were never completed. I felt that it was of joy, of hope. But I felt also it had perished in its formation. In vain, I struggled to perfect, to regain it. Long suffering had nearly annihilated all my ordinary powers of mind. I was an imbecile, an idiot. The vibration of the pendulum was at right angles to my length. I saw the crescent was designed to crest the region of the heart. It would fray the surge of my robe. It would return and repeat its operations again and again. Notwithstanding its terrifically wide sweep, some 30 feet or more, and the hissing vigor of its descent sufficiently to sunder these very walls of iron, yet still the fraying of my robe would be all that, for several minutes, it would accomplish. And at this thought I paused. I dared not go farther than this reflection. I dwelt upon it with the pertinacity of attention, as if in doing so dwelling I could arrest here the descent of the steel. I forced myself to ponder on the sound of the crescent as it should pass across the garment, upon the particular thrilling sensation which the friction of the cloth produces on the nerves. I pondered upon all this frivolity until my teeth were on edge. Down, steadily, it crept. I took a frenzied pleasure in contrasting its downward with lateral velocity, to the right, to the left, far and wide, with a shriek of a damned spirit. To my heart, with the stealthy pace of a tiger, I alternatively laughed and howled as the one or the other idea grew predominant. Down, certainly, relentlessly down, it vibrated within inches of my bosom. I struggled violently, furiously to free my left arm. This This was free from the elbow to the hand. I could reach the ladder from the platter beside me to my mouth with great effort, but no farther. Could I have broken the fastenings above the elbow? I would have seized and attempted to arrest the pendulum. I might as well have attempted to arrest an avalanche. Down, still, unceasingly, still inevitably down. I gasped and struggled at each vibration. I shrunk convulsively at its every sweep. My eyes followed its outward or upward whirls with eagerness of the most unmeaning despair. They closed themselves spasmodically at the descent, though death would have been a relief. Oh, how unspeakable! Still, I quivered in every nerve to think how slight a sinking of the machine would precipitate that keen, glistening axe upon my bosom. It was hope that prompted the nerve to quiver, the frame to shrink. I was hope. The hope that triumphs on the rack, that whispers to the death condemned, even in the dungeons of the Inquisition. I saw that some 10 or 12 vibrations would bring the steel in actual contact with my robe, and with this observation there suddenly came over my spirit all the keen, collected calmness of despair. For the first time, during many hours, or perhaps days, I thought, it now occurred to me that the bandage or circingle that would envelop me was unique. I was tied by no separate cord. The first stroke of the razor-like crescent athwart any portion of the band would so detach it that it would be unwound from my person by means of my left hand. But how fearful in that case! The proximity of the steel, the result of the slightest struggle, how deadly! Was it likely, moreover, that the minions of the torture had not foreseen and provided this for possibility? Was it probably that the bandage crossed my bosom in the track of the pendulum? Dreading to find my fate, and as it seemed my last hope frustrated, I so far elevated my head to obtain a distinct view of my breast. The circingle enveloped my limbs and body close in all directions, save the path of the destroying crescent. Scarcely had I dropped my hand back to its original position when there flashed upon my mind that I could not better describe than as the unformed half that idea of deliverance to which I had previously alluded, and such a moiety only floated indeterminately through my brain when I raised food to my burning lips. The whole thought was now present, feeble, scarcely sane, scarcely indefinite, but still entire. I proceeded at once, with the nervous energy of despair, to attempt its execution. For many hours, the immediate vicinity of the low framework upon which I lay had been literally swarming with rats. They were wild, bold, ravenous. The red eyes glaring upon me as if they waited but for motionless on my part to make me their prey. To what food, I thought, had they become accustomed in the well? They had devoured, as if in spite of all my efforts to prevent them, all but the small remnant of the contents of the dish. I had fallen into a habitual seesaw, or a wave of the hand about the platter, and at length the unconscious uniformity of movement derived effect. In their voracity, the vermin frequently fastened their sharp fangs onto my fingers. With the particles of the oily and spicy viand which now remained, I thoroughly rubbed the bandage wherever I could reach. Then, raising my hand from the floor, I lay breathlessly still. At first, the ravenous animals were startled and terrified at the change, at the cessation of movement. They shrank alarmedly back. Many sought the well. But this was only for a moment. I had not counted in vain on their voracity. Observing that I remained without motion, one or two of the boldest leapt upon the framework and smelt at the surgeon. This seemed the signal for the general rush. Forth from the well they hurried in fresh troops. They clung to the wood. They overran it and leapt in hundreds upon my person. The measured movement of the pendulum disturbed them not at all. Avoiding its strokes, they busied themselves on the anointed bandage. They pressed. They swarmed upon me in ever-accumulating heaps. They writhed upon my throat. Their cold lips sought my own. I was half stifled by their thronging pressure. Disgust, for which the world had no name, swelled my bosom and chill. With a heavy clamminess, my heart. Yet one minute, and I felt the struggle will be over. Plainly, I perceived the loosening of the bandage. I knew that in more than one place it must already be severed. With more than human resolution, I lay still. Nor had I erred in my calculations, nor had I endured in vain. I, at length, felt I was free. The surgical hung in ribbons from my body. But the stroke of the pendulum already pressed upon my bosom. It had divided the serge of the rope. It had cut through the linen beneath. Twice again it swung, and a sharp sense of pain shot through every nerve. But the moment of escape had arrived. At a wave of my hand, my deliverers hurried tumultuously away. With a steady movement, cautiously, sidelong, shrinking and slow, I slid from the embrace of the bandage and beyond the reach of the scimitar. For the moment, at least, I was free. Free! And in the grasp of the Inquisition. I had scarcely stepped from my wooden bed of horror upon the stone of the prison when the motion of the hellish machine ceased, and I beheld it drawn up by some invisible force through the ceiling. This was a lesson which I took desperately to heart. My every motion was undoubtedly watched. Free? I had but escaped death in one form of agony to be delivered into a worse than death in another. With that thought, I rolled my eyes nervously around the barriers of iron that hemmed me in. Something unusual. Some change which at first I could not appreciate distinctly. It was obvious. Had taken place in the apartment. For many minutes of a dreamy and trembling abstraction, I busied myself in vain, unconnected conjecture. During this period, I became aware for the first time of the origin of the sulphurous light which illuminated the cell. I proceeded from a fissure, about half an inch in width, extending entirely around the prison at the base of the walls, which thus appeared and were completely separated from the floor. I endeavored, but of course in vain, to look through the aperture. As I arose from the attempt, the mystery of the alteration in the chamber broke at once from my understanding. I have observed that, although the outlines of the figures upon the wall were sufficiently distinct, yet the colors seemed blurred and indefinite. These colors had now assumed, and were momentarily assuming, a startling and intense brilliancy that gave to the spectral and fiendish portraitures an aspect that might have thrilled even the firmer nerves than my own. Demon eyes of a wild, ghastly vivacity glared at me upon 1,000 directions, where none had been visible before, and gleamed with lurid luster of a fire that I could not force my imagination to regard as unreal. Unreal! Even while I breathed, there came to my nostrils the breath of vapor of heated iron. A suffocating odor pervaded the prison. A deeper glow settled each moment in the eyes that glared at my agonies. A richer tint of crimson infused itself over the pictured horrors of blood. I panted. I gasped for breath. There would be no doubt the design of my tormentors, most unrelenting, most demonic of men. I shrank from the glowing metal at the center of the cell. Amid the thought of the fiery destruction that impended, the idea of the coolness of the well came over my straining vision below. The glare from the enkindled roof illuminated its inmost recesses. Yet for a wild moment did my spirit refuse to comprehend the meaning of what I saw. At length it wrestled its way into my soul. It burned itself in upon my shuddering reason. Oh, for a voice to speak! Oh, horror! Oh, any horror but this! With a shriek, I rushed from the margin and buried my face in my hands, weeping bitterly. The heat rapidly increased, and once again I looked up, shuddering as with a fit from the ague. There had been a second change in the cell, and now the change was obviously in the form. As before, it was in vain that I at first endeavored to appreciate or understand what was taking place, but not long was I left in doubt. The inquisitorial vengeance had been hurried by my twofold escape. There was to be no more dallying with the King of Terrors. The room had been square. I saw that 2 of its iron anglers were now acute, 2 consequently obtuse. The fearful difference quickly increased with low rumbling or moaning sound. In an instant, the apartment had shifted its form into that of a lozenge. But the alteration stopped not here. I neither hoped nor desired it to stop. I could have clasped the red walls to my bosom as a garment of eternal peace. Death, I said. Any death, but that of the pit. Fool! Might I have not known that the pit was the object which I could withstand its pressure? And now flatter and flatter grew the lozenge with a rapidity that left me no time for contemplation. Its center, and of course its greatest width, came just over the yawning gulf. I shrank back, but the closing walls pressed me resistlessly forward. At length, for my seared and writhing body, there was no longer an inch foothold in the firm floor of the prison. I struggled no more. But the agony of my soul found vent in one long, loud, final scream of despair. I felt that I tottered upon the brink. I averted my eyes. There was a discordant hum of human voices. There was a loud blast as of many trumpets. There was harsh grating as of 1,000 thunders. The fiery walls rushed back. An outstretched arm caught my own as I fell, fainting into the abyss. It was that of General Lasalle. The French army had entered Toledo. The Inquisition was now in the hands of its enemies. Hope you enjoyed that story. I believe the next story we might read tonight. Let's see. Let's look. How about The Monkey's Paw by W. Jacobs? One moment, and we will begin the story. Without, the night was cold and wet, but in the small parlor of Laburnum Villa the blinds were drawn and the fire burned brightly. Father and son were at chess. The former, who possessed ideas about the game involving radical changes, put his king into such sharp and unnecessary perils that it even provoked comment from the white-haired lady knitting placidly by the fire. "Hark at the wind," said Mr. White, having seen the fatal mistake after it was too late, was amiably desirous of preventing his son from hearing it. "I'm listening," said the latter, grimly surveying the board as he stretched out his hand. "Check." "I should think that he'd come tonight," said his father, with his hand poised over the board. "Mate," replied the son. "That's the worst of living so far out," bawled Mr. White with sudden, unlooked-for violence. "Of all the beastly, slushly, out-of-the-way places to live in, this is the worst. Pathway's a bog, the road's a torrent. I don't know what people are thinking about. I suppose because only 2 houses are on the road they think it doesn't matter." "Never mind, dear," said his wife soothingly. "Perhaps you'll win the next one." Mr. White looked up sharply, just in time to intercept a knowing glance between mother and son. The words died away on his lips, and he hid a guilty grin in his thin gray beard. "There it is," said Herbert Wright, as the gate banged too loudly and heavy footsteps came towards the door. The old man rose with hospitable haste, and opening the door was heard condoling the new arrival. The new arrival also condoled himself, so that Mrs. White said, "Tut, tut," and coughed gently as her husband entered the room, followed by a tall, burly man, beady of eye and rubicund of visage. "Sergeant Major Morris," he said, introducing him. The sergeant major shook hands, taking the proffered seat by the fire, watched contentedly while his host got out whiskey and tumblers, and stood a small copper kettle in the fire. As the third glass, his eyes got brighter and began to talk. The little family circle regarding with eager interest this visitor from distant parts. as he squared his broad shoulders in the chair, and spoke of strange scenes and doughty deeds, of wars, plagues, and strange peoples. 21 years of it, said Mr. White, nodding at his wife and son. When he went away, he was a slip of youth in the warehouse. Now look at him. He don't look have taken much harm, said Mrs. White politely. I'd like to go to India myself, said the old man, just to look around a bit, you know. Better where you are, said the sergeant major, shaking his head. He put down the empty glass and, sighing softly, shook it again. I should like to see those old temples, fakers, and jugglers, said the old man. What was that you started telling me the other day about a monkey's paw or something, Morris? Nothing, the soldier said hastily. Leastways, nothing worth hearing. Monkey's paw? Said Mrs. White curiously. Well, it's just a bit of what you might call magic, perhaps, said the sergeant major offhandedly. His three listeners leaned forward eagerly. The visitor absent-mindedly put his empty glass to his lips, then set it down again. His host filled it up for him. To look at, said the sergeant major, fumbling in his pocket, it's just an ordinary little paw, dried to a mummy. He took something out of his pocket and proffered it. Mrs. White drew back with a grimace, but her son, taking it, examined it curiously. And what is there special about it? Inquired Mr. White, as he took it from his son. Having examined it, placed it upon the table. It had a spell put on it by an old faker. A very holy man. He wanted to show that fate ruled people's lives, and those who interfered with it did so to their sorrow. He put a spell on it so that 3 separate men could each have 3 wishes from it. His manner was so impressive that his hearers were conscious that their light laughter jarred somewhat. Well, why don't you have 3, sir? Said Herbert White cleverly. The soldier regarded him in a way that the Middle Age is wont to regard presumptuous youth. I have, he said quietly, and his blotchy face whitened. Did you really have all 3 wishes granted? Asked Mrs. White. I did, said the sergeant major, and his glass tapped against his strong teeth. And has anyone else wished? Inquired the old lady. The first man had his 3 wishes, yes, was the reply. I don't know what the first 2 were, but the third was for death. That's how I got the paw. His tones were so grave that a hush fell upon the group. If you had your 3 wishes, it's no good to you now, then, Morris, said the old man at last. What do you keep it for? The soldier shook his head. Fancy, I suppose, he said slowly. If you could have another 3 wishes, said the old man, eyeing him keenly, would you have them? I don't know, said the other. I don't know. He took the paw, dangling it between his front and finger and thumb. Suddenly threw it upon the fire. White, with a slight cry, stooped down and snatched it off. Better let it burn, the soldier said solemnly. If you don't want it, Morris, said the old man, give it to me. I won't, said his friend doggedly. I threw it on the fire. If you keep it, don't blame me for what happens. Pitch it on the fire again like a sensible man. The other shook his head and examined his new possession closely. "How do you do it?" he inquired. "Hold it up in your right hand and wish aloud," said the sergeant major. "But I warn you of the consequences." "Sounds like Arabian Nights," said Mrs. White as she rose and began to set the supper. "Don't you think you might wish for 4 pairs of hands for me?" Her husband drew the talisman from his pocket, and then all three burst into laughter as the sergeant major, with a look of alarm, caught him by the arm. "If you must wish," he said gruffly, "wish for something sensible." Mr. White dropped it back into his pocket. Placing the chairs, motioned his friend to the table. In the business of supper, the talisman was partly forgotten, and afterward the three sat listening in enthralled fashion to a second installment of the soldier's adventures in India. If the tale about the monkey paw is not more truthful than the ones he has been telling us, said Herbert, as the door closed behind their guest, just in time for him to catch the last train, we shan't make much out of it. "Did you give him anything for it, father?" inquired Mrs. Wright, regarding her husband closely. "A trifle," he said, coloring slightly. "He didn't want it, but I made him take it. And he pressed me again to throw it away." "Likely," said Herbert with pretended horror. "Why, we're going to be rich and famous and happy. Wish to be an emperor, father, to begin with. Then you can't be henpecked." He darted around the table, pursued by the malign Mrs. White, armed with an antimacassar. Mr. White took the paw from his pocket and eyed it dubiously. "I don't know what to wish for. That's a fact," he said slowly. "It seems to me I've got all I want. If you only cleared the house, you'd be quite happy, wouldn't you?" said Herbert, with his hand on his shoulder. "Well, wish for £200, then. That'll just do it." The father, smiling shamefacedly at his own credulity, held up the talisman as his son, with a solemn face, somewhat marred by the wink of his mother, sat down at the piano and struck a few impressive chords. "I wish for £200, said the old man distinctly. A fine crash from the piano greeted the words, interrupted by a shuddering cry from the old man. His wife and son ran toward him. "It moved!" he cried, with a glance of disgust at the object as it lay on the floor. "As I wished it, it twisted in my hands like a snake." "I don't see any money," said his son as he picked it up and placed it on the table, "and I bet I never will." "It must have been your fancy, father," said his wife, regarding him anxiously. He shook his head. "Never mind, though. There's no harm done, but it gave me a shock all the same." They sat down by the fire again while two men finished their pipes. Outside, the wind was higher than ever, and the old man started nervously at the sound of a door banging upstairs. A silence unusual and depressing settled upon all three, which lasted until the old couple rose to retire for the night. "I expect you'll find the cash tied up in a big bag in the middle of your bed," said Herbert, as he bade them good night, "and something horrible squatting up on top of the wardrobe, watching as you pocket your ill-gotten gains." He sat alone in the darkness, gazing at the dying fire and seeing faces in it. The last face was so horrible and so simian that as he gazed at it in amazement, it got so vivid that, with a little uneasy laugh, he felt on the table for a glass containing a little water to throw over it. His hand grasped the monkey's paw, and with a little shiver, he wiped his hand on the coat and went to bed. In the brightness of the wintry sun the next morning, as it streamed over the breakfast table, Herbert laughed at his fears. There was an air of prosaic wholesomeness about the room, which had lacked the previous night, and the dirty, shriveled little paw was pitched on the sideboard with a carelessness which betokened no great belief in its virtues. "I suppose all old soldiers are the same," said Mrs. White. "The idea of our listening to such nonsense! How could wishes be granted these days? And if they could, how could 200 pounds hurt you, father?" "Might drop from his head in the sky," said the frivolous Herbert. "Morris said things happened so naturally," said his father. "And you might, if you wished, attribute it to coincidence." "Well, don't break into the money before I come back," said Herbert, as he rose from the table. "I'm afraid it'll turn you into a mean, avaricious old man, and we shall have to disown you." His mother laughed, and, following him to the door, watched him down the road, returning to the breakfast table, was happy at the expense of her husband's credulity, all of which did not prevent her from scurrying to the door at the postman's knock, nor prevent her from referring to somewhat shortly to the retired sergeant major of the bilious habits she had found the post brought the tailor's bill. "Herbert will have some more of his funny remarks, I expect, when he comes home," she said, as they sat at the dinner. "I dare say," said Mr. White, pouring himself some beer. "But for all that, the thing moved in my hand. I'll swear to that." "You thought it did," said the old lady soothingly. "I say it did," replied the other. "There was no thought about it. I had just—" "What's the matter?" His wife made no reply. She was watching the mysterious movements of a man outside who, peering in an undecided fashion at the house, appeared to be trying to make up his mind to enter. In mental connection with the 200 pounds, she noticed that the stranger was well dressed and wore a silk hat of glossy newness. 3 times he paused at the gate and then walked on again. The 4th time he stood with his hand upon it, and then with a sudden resolution flung it open and walked up the path. Mrs. White at the same moment placed her hands behind her and, hurriedly unfastening the strings of her apron, put that useful article of apparel beneath the cushion of her chair. She brought the stranger, who seemed ill at ease, into the room. He gazed at her furtively and listened in a preoccupied fashion as the old lady apologized for the appearance of the room and her husband's coat, a garment which he usually reserved for the garden. She then waited patiently, as her sex would permit, for him to broach his business, but he was at first strangely silent. I was asked to call," he said at last, and stooped and picked a piece of cotton from his trousers. "I come from Ma and Megan's." The old lady started. "Is anything the matter?" she asked breathlessly. "Has anything happened to Herbert? What is it? What is it?" Her husband interposed. There, mother," he said hastily. "Sit down. Don't jump to conclusions. You've not brought bad news, I'm sure, sir." And he eyed the other wistfully. "I'm sorry," began the visitor. "Is he hurt?" demanded the mother. The visitor bowed in assent. "Badly hurt," he said quietly. "But he's not in any pain. Oh, thank God, said the old woman, clasping her hands. Thank God for that. Thank... She broke off suddenly as the sinister meaning of the assurance dawned on her, and she saw the awful confirmation of her fears in the other's averted face. She caught her breath, turning to her slower-witted husband, laid her trembling old hand upon his. There was a long silence. He was caught in the machinery, said the visitor at length in a low voice. Caught in the machinery, repeated Mr. White in a dazed fashion. Yes. He sat staring blankly out the window, taking his wife's hand between his own, pressed it as if he had been wont to do in their old courting days nearly 40 years before. He was the only one of us left to us, he said, turning gently to the visitor. It is hard. The other coughed and, rising, walked slowly to the window. The firm wished me to convey their sincerest sympathy with you in your great loss, he said without looking around. I beg you will understand I'm only their servant and merely obeying their orders. There was no reply. The old woman's face was white, her eyes staring, her breath inaudible. On the husband's face was such a look that such as his friend the sergeant might have carried into his first action. I was to say that Ma and Meggins disclaim all responsibility, continued the other. They admit no liability at all, but in consideration of your son's services, they wish to present you with a certain sum as compensation. Mr. White dropped his wife's hand, rising to his feet, gazing with a look of horror at his visitor. His dry lips shaped the words. How much? 200 pounds, was the answer. Unconscious of his wife's shriek, the old man smiled faintly, put out his hands like a sightless man, and dropped, a senseless heap, to the floor. In the huge new cemetery, some 2 miles distant, the old people buried their dead and came back to a house steeped in shadow and silence. It was all over so quickly that at first they could hardly realize it, and remained in a state of expectation as though as something else to happen. Something else which was to lighten this load, too heavy for old hearts to bear. But the days passed, and the expectation gave place to resignation. The hopelessness resignation of the old, sometimes miscalled apathy. Sometimes they hardly exchanged a word, for now they had nothing to talk about, and their days were long to weariness. It was about a week after that the old man, waking suddenly in the night, stretched out his hand and found himself alone in the room was in darkness. The sound of subdued weeping came from this window. He raised himself in bed and listened. Come back, he said tenderly. You'll be cold. It is colder for my son, said the old woman, and wept afresh. The sound of her sobs died away on his ears. The bed was warm, and his eyes heavy with sleep. He dozed fitfully, and then slept until a sudden wild cry from his wife awoke him with a stop. The paw! She cried wildly. The monkey's paw! He started up in alarm. Where? Where is it? What's the matter? She came stumbling across the room toward him. I want it, she said quietly. You've not destroyed it? It's in the parlor, on the bracket, he replied, marveling. Why? She cried and laughed together, bending over, kissed his cheek. I only just thought of it, she said hysterically. Why didn't I think of it before? Why didn't you think of it? Think of what? He questioned. The other 2 wishes, she replied rapidly. We've only had one. Was that not enough? He demanded fiercely. No! We'll have one more. Go down and get it quickly and wish our boy alive again. The man sat up in bed and flung the bedclothes from his quaking limbs. Good God, you are mad, he cried aghast. Get it, she panted. Get it quickly and wish. Oh, my boy, my boy. Her husband struck a match and lit the candle. Get back to bed, he said unsteadily. You don't know what you are saying. We had our first wish granted, said the old woman feverishly. Why not the second? A coincidence, stammered the old man. Go and get it and wish, cried the old woman, quivering with excitement. The old man turned and regarded her, and his voice shook. He's been dead 10 days. And besides, I would not tell you else, but I could only recognize him by his clothing. If he was too terrible for you to see, then how now? Bring him back, cried the old woman, and dragged him towards the door. Do you think I fear the child I have nursed? He went down in the darkness, felt his way to the parlor, and then to the mantelpiece. The talisman was in its place, and a horrible fear that the unspoken wish might bring his mutilated son before him ere he could escape from the room seized upon him, and he caught his breath as he found he had lost the direction of the door. His brow cold with sweat, he felt his way around the table, groped along the wall until he found himself in a small passage with the unwholesome thing in his hand. Even his wife's face seemed changed as he entered the room. It was white and expectant, and to his fears seemed to have an unnatural look upon it. He was afraid of her. Wish! She cried in a strong voice. It is foolish and wicked. Wish! Repeated his wife. He raised his hand. I wish my son alive again. The talisman fell to the floor, and he regarded Lee fearfully. Then he sank, trembling, into the chair as the old woman with burning eyes walked to the window and raised the blind. He sat until he was chilled with the cold, glancing occasionally at the figure of the old woman peering through the window. The candle end, which had burned low below the rim of the china candlestick, was throwing pulsating shadows on the ceiling and walls, until, with a flicker larger than the rest, it expired. The old man, with an unspeakable sense of relief at the failure of the talisman, crept back to his bed. And a minute or two afterward, the old woman came silently and apathetically beside him. Neither spoke, but both lay silently listening to the ticking of the clock. A stair creaked, and a squeaky mouse scurried noisily through the wall. The darkness was oppressive, and after lying for some time screwing up his courage, the husband took the box of matches, and striking one, went downstairs for a candle. At the foot of the stairs the match went out, and he paused to strike another, and at the same moment a knock, so quiet and stealthily as to be scarcely audible, sounded on the front door. The matches fell from his hand. He stood motionless, his breath suspended until the knock was repeated. Then he turned and fled swiftly back to his room and closed the door behind him. A third knock sounded through the house. "What's that?" cried the old woman, starting up. "A rat," said the old man in shaking tones. A rat. It passed me on the stairs." His wife sat up in bed, listening, a loud knock resounding through the house. "It's Herbert!" she screamed. "It's Herbert!" She ran to the door, but her husband was before her, catching her by the arm, held her tightly. "What are you going to do?" he whispered hoarsely. "It's my boy! It's Herbert!" she cried, struggling mechanically. "I forgot it was 2 miles away. What are you holding me for? Let me go! I must open the door!" "For God's sake, don't let it in!" cried the old man. "You're afraid of your own son!" she cried, struggling. "Let me go! I'm coming! Herbert, I'm coming!" There was another knock. And another. The old woman, with a sudden wrench, broke free and ran from the room. Her husband followed to the landing and called after her appealingly as she hurried downstairs. He heard the chain rattle back and the bottom bolt drawn slowly and stiffly from the socket. Then the old woman's voice, strained and panting. "The bolt!" she cried loudly. "Come down! I can't reach it!" But her husband was on his hands and knees, groping wildly on the floor in search of the paw. If he could only find the thing before the thing got inside. A perfect fusillade of knocks reverberated through the house, and he heard the scraping of a chair as his wife put down in the passage against the door. He heard the creaking of the bolt as it came slowly back. And at the same moment, he found the monkey's paw, and frantically breathed his third and last wish. The knocking ceased suddenly, although the echoes of it were still in the house. He heard the chair drawn back and the door opened. The cold wind rushed up the staircase, and a loud wail of disappointment and misery from his wife gave him courage to run down to her side, then to the gate beyond. The street lamp, flickering opposite, shone on a quiet and deserted road. Okay, I think we should call it a night. I do hope you had an enjoyable evening, that these stories sent a chill down your spine. There will be more. We will do this another night, continuing. I bid you all a good evening. Thank you